Now when I say I'm about to summon Dragoon, you might get a little freaked out, but don't worry, all I was gonna do was pendulum summon. Dragoons of Draconia, a normal pendulum monster introduced in
Secrets of Eternity.
It was actually the sneak peek promo for the set, so it was available in ultra rare if you showed up to one of the events. While it looks like an innocent enough normal monster, it actually kickstarted an archetype that nobody cared about. See, during the Arc V era of Yu-Gi-Oh, pendulum monsters were definitely something, being cards that worked as both monsters and spells that unlocked a new summoning method that required extra math. Players were initially skeptical, and Konami was cautious about releasing some really powerful monsters right off the bat. I think because of this, normal pendulums felt a lot more prominent during the early days aside from the Odd Eyes and Performapal monsters. Heck, even Cleafort's staple monster was normal. Anyway, during the sneak peek events for Yu-Gi-Oh at the time, we started off with cards like Dragonhorn Hunter and Lance Ferinkus as promos. But then everything changed when the Fire attribute made its debut. Dragoons of Draconia is a normal level 4 2-scale pendulum monster with 1800 attack and 200 defense. It has a decent spell effect that allows you to add a level 4 or higher normal monster from your deck to your hand if a normal monster you control destroys an opponent's monster in battle. The artwork depicts an anthropomorphic dragon riding atop a dinosaur. It kind of stood out from other cards at the time with how it was rendered. Something about it felt like there was a deeper story, heck, the flavor text even hinted toward it. Armed with muskets and iron spears, these mounted land troops of the Draconia Empire are feared by the Reptier Kingdom and other bordering nations. Well, that sounds pretty cool, but what the heck is a Reptier Kingdom? Are they just making things up to sound cool? Well, maybe in the next set, Cross Souls, we would get more answers with the introduction of Sea Dragoons of Draconia. Silently creeping in from the deep sea, elite Black Ops Marine troops of the Draconia Empire wage an endless battle against the hated Principality of Dynon on the sea's opposite sides. Hold on, now we've got the Principality of Dynon to worry about? Sure, I get that giving us the marine troops of this fictional empire is a cool way to expand the lore, especially because this is effectively the same type of monster, just riding a different creature. But now the Empire of Draconia seems to be making a lot of enemies, because in the very next set we got Sky Dragoons of Draconia, which tells us, rumored as being formed to invade the neutral floating sky state of Chulu, these mounted air troops of the Draconia Empire have prompted bordering nations to strengthen their security. Sure, I get wanting to cover your bases by having land, sea, and air troops, but invading a neutral territory? Oh yeah, these guys are the aggressors. That's just about all we get for the Draconia monsters, but at least they all kind of have some synergy. All of their spell effects benefit your normal monsters, and among these three, we even have some pretty decent pendulum scales. Combining them with some other normal pendulums that filled the first few sets, and it actually made for a competent deck. Nothing meta-defining, but a fun albeit janky budget alternative to learn the new summoning mechanic. And so that's where most people thought the story of Draconia would end. Just a few neat cards that look shiny if you got the promos. But then as we continued moving through this generation of Yu-Gi-Oh, we would get a few more cards. That's right, you can't just make some enemies and expect to get away without a single scratch. Because in the following sets and still appearing as sneak peek promo cards, we would get Samurai Cavalry Reptier, Steel Cavalry Dynon, and Magical Cavalry of Shulub. Finally, everything had come full circle and the surrounding forces we had read about were now officially canon. And I really like that these are the reverse of the originals. They're pendulum effect monsters without any spell effects. The Reptier armies are more samurai inspired with a different type of dinosaur man riding an armored triceratops. Dynon appears to be more gladiator themed with a chariot being pulled by two raptors. And finally, Shulub takes to the skies by means of magical mechanical wings. So would these forces be able to band together and stop the Empire of Draconia? Well, no. See, even though these are all effect monsters, their effects aren't actually very good against pendulum monsters. Samurai Cavalry has a cool effect to destroy an opponent's monster at the start of the damage step, as long as that target is not a pendulum monster. Pretty good overall, but not useful against their enemies. Steel Cavalry's effect is that both its attack and defense are cut in half in battles against a pendulum monster. A real shame because it has one of the highest defense stats in the game for a level 4 monster. And finally, Magical Cavalry is unaffected by monsters' effects, except for pendulum monsters. You're telling me that these guys either auto-lose or are straight up useless against the Dragoons? Man, that is just sad. If anything, these are lore-accurate effects that prove just how much of a hold the Empire of Draconia has over the other kingdoms. Though if you were to play these two against each other as different decks, honestly, the effect monsters might have a bit of an upper hand, solely based on the fact that they actually have some synergy with each other, all being level 4 dinosaurs. Search in with Fossil Dig, set up your scales, pendulum summon, and then overlay for a Volzar Logia. And that's not even to mention all the other dinosaur support we would later get. I really just find all of these monsters so weird. When I got my Dragoons of Draconia, I thought it was a pretty cool card. And when I got Sea Dragoons later on, I was really hoping this would eventually develop into a full-on archetype that could really make a splash. Looking back in retrospect at what we actually got, I do appreciate how these monsters alluded to in the flavor text become real cards, but oh my gosh, none of them actually do anything. Sure, some of them made it into niche strategies, but they were more like sidekicks. One of those cases where the lore of a Yu-Gi-Oh card is so much more interesting than the actual thing. But imagine how funny it would be if we eventually got an announcement for even more support of the Dragoons of Draconia archetype, if you can even really call it an archetype. So let me know if you remember these weird little guys and what you think of them. Anyway, this is Gatarax, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all later.